desert, for I walk in this world. Well, good morning. Here we are again. We are walking with Jesus through the Gospel of Mark, and we are now up to Mark chapter 7. We're looking at verses 24 through 37, a little longer passage than we normally do. But in this particular passage, we have two different healings taking place. Now, we've seen Jesus doing healings on a number of occasions, but these two healings were remarkable, perhaps in a whole new way. We know that Jesus was a Jew. He was sent through Jewish genealogies. He was the Messiah that the Jews had anticipated. He was the fulfillment of Jewish prophecy. But in these cases, evidently, Jesus crossed the boundary, and Jesus went to the Gentiles. The first case is clearly a Gentile woman. It says so in verse 26. She had come to Jesus because her daughter was demon-possessed, and this mother came to Jesus seeking his healing of her daughter. We can understand that. All of us who are parents, if we had a child who was in a terrible dilemma, we would talk to anybody. We would do anything that we could. We would go any place in order for that child to be healed, because that's what we do as parents. We have this deep concern for our children, and this woman came with that deep concern because, here again, we don't have the background story, but as a Gentile even, she had been hearing about Jesus. She heard about the healings that he had done. Just a matter of fact, last week, as we talked about some of these things, we talked about the fact that Jesus had been in this area on the northern side of Galilee, and he had been healing people there, and the word about him spread everywhere. Well, perhaps this woman was one who had heard about Jesus healing. She ended up going to him and asking him to heal her daughter. And there's an interesting interchange that exchange that happens here between this desperate mother and Jesus, because at first it sounds like Jesus is resisting, but I don't think he was really doing that. I think he was clarifying something, and he was making very obvious what he was about to do. This woman ended up reasoning with Jesus, telling him why she thought her daughter should be healed, like all the other healings that had been taking place. And Jesus agreed. Jesus sent her on her way with the assurance that her daughter had indeed been healed. And when this woman got back home, she found her daughter well, healed, the demon gone. Bottom line lesson: Jesus loves all people. Jesus crossed a barrier at that point that we might never have expected. He crossed a barrier that many of his day evidently never really thought that he would cross, because he walked into the world of the Gentiles. He showed compassion for the Gentiles. The prophet Joel had prophesied that he would do this, that the coming Messiah would do this, but in fact, actually, Joel was talking about that the Spirit of God would be poured out upon all flesh. But that's what Joel was talking about here. And so the promise was that God was going to expand his realm to beyond the Jewish people. But most people evidently never stopped to really think about that. The Jews, I think, kind of claimed Jesus for their own, those who wanted to claim him at all. But they certainly understood, especially after this, that Jesus loves all people. And then in the next case, it isn't quite as clear whether this man was a Gentile or a Jew. We do know that he had gone back up. The woman was in one place, but in between these two healings, Jesus went back up to the Decapolis, up where he had been before, And this man came to Jesus, and the Decapolis was primarily a Gentile region. So I think it's a fair possibility, at least, that this man was, in fact, a Gentile. And so he came to Jesus. He was deaf. He had trouble speaking. This time, Jesus didn't just speak a cure into happening. We would love to have been there and watched this, because Jesus did something different this time. Jesus took his hands and he put his fingers into the man's ears. And then he took spit. And we don't know exactly the logistics of this, but it kind of sounds to me like Jesus spit in his hand, and then he took the saliva and touched the tongue of the man. Sounds a little gross to us, doesn't it? But if you were that man, if you were talking to the Son of God, you'd allow this to happen. And then immediately the man's hearing was restored and his speech was made clear. Amazing healings, because Jesus loves all people. And then, interesting, Jesus humbly told those people that were present, don't tell anybody about this. But they did. Of course they did. They couldn't help it. They'd seen Jesus heal, and this man was made whole in a way that he never thought could have happened. This man experienced something that he could not keep quiet about, and probably his family could not keep quiet about. His friends could not keep quiet about it. All of them had known this man as a deaf man, a man unable to clearly speak, and then suddenly it was made clear, and it was all because of Jesus. Maybe if we understood how we have been made whole, maybe we couldn't keep quiet either. Maybe we take too much for granted. Maybe we just assume too much. But the healing power of Jesus reaching into our lives, making us whole in a way that we could never have imagined, taking away sin, making us people made in the image of God to be restored back into that image. If we really understood that, we could not keep quiet. Oh, if that were just the case. I wish that we as Christians could not keep quiet. It would change the world. I hope today you find a good reason to be unable to be quiet. Have a great day. Bye.
They resound with God's own heart. Oh, let the ancient words impart. Words of life, words of hope.